Welcome everyone. Today we are very excited to bring you the fourth episode of our new 101 Ways podcast. So why did we decide to launch a new podcast? We wanted to give something back to our customers and the wider tech community. We've worked on some really exciting projects over the last 10 years and also have a very talented team of consultants with lots of knowledge and experience. So we thought we'd share it with you. As the name suggests, there are 101 ways to solve a problem. And it's about having the correct skills and expertise in place to find the right way forward that works for you. So we hope our podcast will go some way to helping you do just that. You can listen, download and follow us on Spotify and also watch and subscribe on the YouTube channel. I'm going to be your host for the next few episodes. My name is Emma. I'm Chief of Staff here at 101 Ways and I lead the practice and knowledge area of our business. So in this episode, I'm going to be joined by John Fredrickson. John, why don't you introduce yourself for us?
Hello, Emma. I'm John. I'm the Director of Platform Engineering at FreeAgent. FreeAgent is an accounting software as a service company based in Edinburgh, though 50% of our staff are remote. I've been at FreeAgent for about 5 years. Before that, I've had roles at Sky, Oracle, Optum, Yahoo, and quite a few others in probably a 25-year career history, starting out as a system administrator, web DBA, and all the way through to team lead and manager of managers for the past 5 or 10 years. I've come across many technology modernization projects during that time, probably with a lot of grey hairs as a result, some good humour and stories. So I'm looking forward to talking mainly about a recent big modernisation we've done.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so this is all about this quarter is all about that theme of modernisation, and I was really interested to talk to you. For one, you've got such that breadth of experience across all the different angles into it, but I know that that's what you've been really focused on right now. So let's start with that general view of what do we even mean when we say modernisation, and what does it mean to you?
Okay, well, to me, it really means a big or significant transformation that follows the approach of modernising what you have. Generally, in my experience, you find that systems probably have a particular lifespan. You start to build up tech debt, you maybe start to run into capacity problems or reliability problems. And obviously you can work on those things, but sometimes you just need to get a complete blank sheet of paper, do a rebuild, re-architect exercise to reset the clock. And that can give you new technical opportunities. It can help with maybe you have a skills shortage in your old technology. Maybe you want to address that. There's maybe some ambitions you have as an organization that can't really be squeezed into the current technology stack you're running. In general, I've found that there are several reasons for doing a modernization. It's hardly ever just a single factor. Sometimes, there might be, as in our data center provider is ending our contract on December the 31st. All right, you've got to get out whether you want to or not. But quite often there are a number of reasons for doing a modernization, and it's not as binary simple as just one thing. So I'm a big believer in communicating regularly and trying to sort of gather a team around that mission and setting yourselves up for success, because there are going to be some challenges along the way, and you might be able to read how other companies have done a similar move, but modernizations are really the type of projects in my mind that's slightly unique to your company and your situation. So although you bring knowledge of previous lessons learned, you've read things on the web, you maybe recruit consultants, you might sort of hire some extra people, you really have to sort of be prepared to face some new challenges along the way.
really interested in it's something I've been thinking about for a while as I've been exploring this topic, and so I'm gonna you're my victim. I'm gonna drill into it with you. Is at what point does it become like the tipping point of, okay, we have to do something about it? No one sets out to have a not modern technology system. No, nobody wants to be behind the curve on that, but it's the kind of thing that it must creep up on you, or no one's set out to not stay modern and stay up to date. At what point do you say, actually, it's time to go and refresh things? It's time there's a whole bunch of stuff here we've missed, that we've fallen behind in, or it's time to go and revamp and go and modernize. How does it? We all talk about continual improvement. We're clearly not doing that if we're going to hit a point where we say, right, stop and modernize.
In my experience, there's probably never a good time for a business to modernize, because the wheels of the bus have always got to keep turning. The way it's generally worked for me and companies I've been involved with is it's regularly you sort of take a step back and have a look at where you are now, and will it get you the next 12 months, 24 months, sort of 5 years down the line. And there probably isn't a definite tipping point or KPI that's suddenly going to change that lights up and you must modernize now. But there is a little bit of sort of crystal ball gazing or forecasting to see when you might need to modernize, or you could be talking to the business and thinking about, all right, we may want to offer new machine learning applications and services. Is that going to be easy where we are, or is that going to be really, really complicated? Exec sponsorship is really, really important, and having a good exec or strong leadership who are sort of committed to making the change and agree about making the change is really key, because you're going to have to sell the message internally. Because as a generalization, and this not be correct for everyone, people do tend to be slightly afraid of change or something new. It makes people nervous. And if you've got people who've been used to your hosting working the way it does, your CI/CD working the way it does, and the thought of, right, we want to make a radical change to some or all of that stuff, and we want the business to keep ticking over while we're doing it, and the people in your teams may not have done anything like this before. I mean, actually, you may not have done anything like this one before. So I would say, summarize as look out in advance for when you need to modernize, be brave and definite about your decision, and have a good message about it, because you're going to have to be repeating that message quite a lot, and probably repeating that message as you go, to help keep people comfortable that the track you're going on is what the business wants to do. I realize I'm talking quite theoretical there. So going back to a real and fairly recent example, when I joined Free Agent, we were hosted in a data center, a couple of data centers that had worked very well for us. It was fairly cost effective. We had 5 nines availability for our product. Yeah, everything's rosy, but it wasn't quite that. We were starting to realize we would have scaling problems. We were already having problems recruiting people with the skills to run virtualized hosted infrastructure, because that was becoming less popular in the marketplace. So that was a factor to say, all right, we should move. And then you start to think about, well, actually, we could use more hosted services and managed services. We could manage less ourselves, not because we want to reduce staff numbers or anything like that, but we wanted to reduce the amount of keeping the lights on work and patching and sort of BAU that was taking an increasing amount of time, and be able to do more project and innovation work. So that was our message. That was initially the presentation and the pitch. As we went on, practically every month I was giving a talk in our engineering forum about, here's how we're doing along the plan. And we knew we had people quite nervous about what sort of on-demand hosting costs would be, because we hadn't done that before. We'd been very fixed. So we'd done some forecasting, but we shared that with everyone. We shared with everyone, here's how much we're spending per month. Here's how it's going. We were very open. Sometimes we didn't always have good news to share. We had, we've hit this challenge. We might have to think of a way around it. We don't know it yet, but we'll give you an update next week or next month. But just sort of bringing people along the journey with you really, really helped.
Did you get much resistance to that?
Initially, yes. I think our entire DevOps team, bar one, thought it was a mad idea. But we gave them, had the idea of sort of giving them a sort of mini budget and their own sort of play areas on AWS, and say, up to so much a month, just, you can use that as a playground. Do what you like with it, as long as it's not illegal. And that helped. I mean, it might be a sort of a generalization, but people do like sort of exploring techie toys and new technology. So although there were challenges to overcome as well, into how do we move such and such a service from the data center into AWS, where they run a different technology at all. At least you can have a bit of a play with some things you're familiar with and see how it works in cloud land, and then start to dig into the unknowns. We also we recruited a couple of really good people who already had very strong cloud skills. So that sort of changed the mix a bit and came preloaded with enthusiasm. So at the ground level, so it wasn't just me saying, "Yay, the cloud is great, we've got to do it," because that only goes so far. We had some other people in who could help and show other team members, "Hey, there's this cool stuff." We gave people training time as well, and paid for the team to do a couple of certifications as well. So there was a sort of a CV benefit as well as a learning benefit. And I think as a technical manager, my approach is not necessarily to try and solve all of the problems of migration based on what I know. My approach is to try and bring people together to solve a common problem and go on that journey with you. And I think the journey and bringing people along with you is a useful skill to have.
And how long did that take then? What kind of timeline are you talking about?
We took 18 months to re-platform our technology, move it onto AWS, and do a cutover. We did think we could do it more quickly earlier on, and we were wrong. But it was that was one of the hiccups that we found. I mean, when you're doing a big project for the first time, you don't really know how long it's going to take. And of course, the business, your stakeholders are going to say, yes, when can I have it? So you do need to sort of give them a date, but we definitely did have to reforecast, and we actually decided we experimented with a different estimation and planning technique called PERT, which came originally from the US Navy. And when we replanned, we tried to make it fun. I mean, generally engineers and techies hate giving estimates, but the PERT technique in, let's say, 60 seconds or less is you try and sort of split your project into epics or something like that. And for each epic, you just do a quick guess of what's the best possible time we could do this in. Then you go, what's the worst case scenario? And then the third one is, what do we think is probably about average? And there's a little bit of maths in there, because basically you have a distribution, and those distributions tend to sort of average down. And we did a replanning exercise, and we came out with our second date. And once we reviewed our plan, actually we found out that our estimation and our tool, which wasn't rocket science, it was, I think we had about 40 rows in a spreadsheet. That was the scale of it. It wasn't War and Peace. Was pretty good. And we could see ourselves sort of going through roughly the things we'd done. Nice, simple Gantt chart, no over the top stuff that you could kind of present. And we happily landed within a day of when we said we would, which was slightly fortuitous and a bit of a fluke, but we would have been around there to within a week or two. So yeah, that was pretty fun, and it got the first meeting of having a replan was a bit like pulling teeth. Everyone was depressed because, oh God, it's going to take longer than we thought. John's on another management thing. He's going to try some other trick on us, but we worked through it together, and we got to when, having done that, it was, I think I generally try and shelter teams from too much reporting and bureaucratic overhead. Just sort of do what you need to do, then act a bit of a buffer, keep the stakeholders happy, and on you go.
So as that buffer, and as that kind of the translation between the business and your stakeholders and the people that are trying to do it against, I want to take it to have this in my head of you've done the convincing job in the first place. We can see a need here, we can see an opportunity and do something awesome. But it's coming from a place of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because it's not broke, but you can see a potential. So there must be the human benefit that you can see. So you've done the pitch around that and managed to convince it. You then have to prove that. So you're going to have to realize those benefits and show that value and demonstrate that. When that's also with a backdrop of it's taking longer than we thought. Is it the right direction? People are starting to lose confidence. What are the things and the tools and how did you keep that convincing? I'm interested in the convincing in the first place, but then how do you demonstrate that it's still the right direction and that you can realize those benefits?
We found, and we chose a couple of parts of our estate that we could move over more quickly. So, and though one of them we moved over, one of them we ran in parallel. That's an error on my part. Sorry. We had a fairly complicated CI/CD system, and we mirrored that and had that running on AWS reasonably early on. So we knew we could do deployments. We knew we could run our test suite. We didn't really have an app that fully worked because of the replatforming, but we knew that one of the big complications had gone. That was a reassurance for the internal teams working on the project. The other thing was test environments and test servers, and we're in a data center where a fixed number of physical servers. If you want to buy more, it's a pain in the neck. It's about 6 months worth of work to get things bought, get more rack space, get them installed, all of that. We introduced a fleet of test and integration servers on AWS, and instantly we could double the number of test servers we had, because it's AWS. You can just go, yeah, I want 10 of, I want 20 of. And we adjusted the tools that our developers use to access these servers. So it worked in exactly the same way. And they didn't even really have to know that their server was in a data center or on AWS. For 2 weeks, we had odd-numbered servers in the data center and even-numbered servers in AWS. But some smart guy worked out that suddenly we had more even-numbered servers than odd. But and then we were a bit more sort of, okay, we'll change the numbering scheme. But it was kind of interesting to just run for a few days and see if anyone noticed the difference. And then we can say, look, you've got all these new servers and they're a bit faster. Isn't this great? The next thing we did on that was to sort of demonstrate that, okay, here's the cost of those servers. Our devs only work sort of 9 to 5. Yeah, we'll show you the cost saving of turning them off overnight, because that wasn't something we needed to do in the data center, but it was just handy and it was quick. So integration servers and test servers along the way was an example of a sort of a win that showed people that it was happening, that we'd got some technology running in there, that it wasn't going to be scary to use. We'd tried to sort of reduce the friction as much as possible. So, I may sound as if I'm a poster person for cloud migrations, or technology migrations. There are downsides and snags, but you do really have to sort of think glass half full and focus on the positives and find the positives, because if a modernization project is long, you want to have some wins along the way.
What about as far as being more customer facing? Did the customers even notice, the people that are using the platform at all?
I didn't notice.
How did it show up for them, right?
We didn't do parallel live running because we did have some concerns about the way database replication would work between our database technology on the cloud and in the data center. But we borrowed the approach actually from one of our competitors, but I don't mind giving credit where credit's due. I mean, Intuit, another accounting software firm, had done a cloud move, and they tried to do things they did sort of tiptoes and sort of touchdowns from their old environment to their new. And we could do a sort of tiptoe into the cloud that would be pretty non-disruptive to our customers. So there would be about 30 seconds of read only, and then the hosting was in the other place. So we did a couple of those, and we did them late at night because our customers are UK based. We guessed that we probably wouldn't disturb many people anyway. I mean, there are some night owls who want to do their accounts at 11, 12 o'clock at night, but yes, good.
Especially on January the 31st, I'm sure everybody's like...
Oh, well, yes, we were definitely not going to do our move on January. Nobody noticed at the time. A couple of people did notice in the following day and week that a couple of parts of our service were running slightly more slowly. So that we have a fairly complicated setup. We have, a couple of 100,000 hardcore users. Although we tested, that testing is always a percentage game. You can never cover all users, all scenarios. So we did slightly cheat at that point. Again, AWS gives you the option. We just decided we would sort of turn up the power on the database hosting. And we also began sort of have a sort of hit list of things we knew that were performing slightly more slowly because, there is a change in technology. We no longer had database servers in the same rack as app servers. There was a database service and there were application containers in the cloud somewhere, and we knew they were in the same availability zone, but they may not have been in the same rack. So some of our very complicated queries and jobs were running a bit slower. So that took a bit of optimization, but it was a handful of people who noticed, and we were able to relatively rapidly mop that up and then shrink the database back again, because you can do that on AWS.
Like you say, it can take a long time. We're talking 18 months, and demonstrating the wins as you go. And you put a lot of emphasis on how you keep everyone else positive and engaged and focused. And I guess I'm curious as to, did you ever lose faith? What was your point when you were like, oh my goodness, what have I started? Like, this is not how I thought it would go.
Yes, there were a couple of times, and I think I relied on my boss at the time, Ollie Heedy, is the CTO and one of the co-founders of Free Agent. He was very good at being sort of positive when I was having a down moment about it, and I think I did the reverse at times. Sometimes he was going, "Oh, it's taking ages. Why isn't it going faster?" I also talked to sort of friends and ex colleagues about it, and sort of had a sort of bit of a peer support thing going on, and I would admit to the team and the people working on it, okay, we've hit a snag here. What can we do about it? How can I help? But try to be wearing your sort of optimistic shirt there rather than your sort of, oh no, it's never going to work, because I think in technology projects there is always a way around a problem. It might be different, or it might be harder than you think, but one of the most frustrating things was actually dealing with a couple of the third parties we had to deal with, and we had estimated timescales, but one of them was HMRC, and yes, HMRC are lovely. You've got to say that, but yes, they're not a supplier you have a commercial relationship with. They have leverage with you, not the other way around. And that was a particular sort of tear my hair out thing. But we got over it. And
interesting, actually. One of the topics that we are drilling into in this series of podcasts around modernisation is how are you particularly impacted in a highly regulated environment. So we're going to talk about that separately in a different one. But of course, you're working in that space as well as an accounting software. And when you're doing that big shift, how you're hosting things and how you're managing that must have been, you must have been under the spotlight as far as, are you managing that transition well? What's going to be the impact? And this is people's finances at the end of the day.
We're not as regulated as a bank. We're we're actually owned by the NatWest Group, though we run as a second brand, a bit like Metal. There is some governance there. We generally had good practice ourselves, and I think we are fairly lucky that the bank trusted us to do a decent job, and the bank was involved and a partner with Free Agent before they bought us. So, and before I joined, so they must have had a degree of happiness that we generally did the right thing. We do have some governance from the bank, but it is fairly light touch. So it wasn't. I don't know. It's a necessary thing, and I feel the weight of responsibility for my users, whatever system I'm involved with, whether it was Now TV and just people being able to watch their favorite football game or Game of Thrones at the right time reliably, to we are sort of looking after your financial information, and that's got to be correct. It's a big thing. We've got lots of small businesses who trust us to make their lives easier, and we definitely don't want to be making their lives harder or giving ourselves any reputational risk.
So where are you now in that journey? Is it done? Have you modernized? You're finished?
We're mostly finished. There are still some new services we're experimenting with and plan to use. As part of the project, one thing I was very keen on, we needed to have more people. I had a big desire to hire more juniors and more female staff and get a more diverse staff representation. So we've been able to do that. That was initially another thing to overcome some resistance of, because we previously had a fairly small team. They were all very senior. There was we're not really in a place to train up less senior people, but at some stage you've got to do that. We introduced interns a bit more as a starter way of doing that. I think we're in a reasonably good place now. I mean, platform engineering is just over 25% female now, and during the last 24 months, 40% of our hires have been female. So, and we do have some good diversity. Half our staff are remote anywhere in the UK, so you don't have to be going into an office. And we support people's sort of work-life balance. The other thing that took a while afterwards is we did a cost optimization approach that I've found quite enjoyable. When we did the transformation, we had a budget, and we want reliability, we want the service to work. We know roughly what it's going to cost. Let's just do it like that, and we'll look at the costs later, because there's only so much you can do at once. We just took an approach of asking the team to think of some opportunities. What did they think we could save money on? And we just very quickly rated them. Project A, we think we can save $50,000 a year, and it's low effort. Project B, $5,000 a year, really hard. And you just say, right, the big wins that are easier to do, we'll do. And every now and again, we look at that. But in the last 2 years, we've saved about 65% of our costs, while adding 50%, actually more, 75% to our user base. And introducing new services. So that's brilliant. I think I think we're ready for the next adventure now.
So what is that next adventure?
We're still wanting to increase the way we're data driven. We already have some machine learning applications and services. We have some interest in introducing more. We have experienced sort of an increase in our use of event tracking and data warehousing, and I don't know whether we'll ever get to nirvana in our use of business intelligence and reporting. We've made a lot of progress, but I think that's still something to be finished, or we still have goals to hit.
Which is nice, right? You don't want to ever really be finished. There should always be something else that you're aiming for.
Yes, there are some new. Oh dear, let's start that sentence again. There are some new services and features we want to launch. Some of those are quite exciting and will require some technical changes on the back end. And I'm a sort of I love sort of back end technology. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into those. So watch this space.
Awesome. So someone listening to this that can recognise themselves in some of the challenges that you described earlier on, and they're thinking, I really have to have been beating around the bush this a long time. I really have to do something about myself, and maybe it's time that we embarked on it ourselves. What's your advice for how someone would get started then? How do they go about doing that convincing piece in the first place? What's the baby steps that they can take to really start to be practical and get moving?
I'd start by writing on 1 or 2 pages of A4 what you want to do and why you want to do it. What are the challenges you're facing, and state some goals. Not necessarily all goals, but there should be some goals so you know what done or what good looks like, and that's the sort of the Bible or the message, and that's how you'll convince people. Maybe you can make that up in your head, but I like lists or summaries. So I would sort of start at the beginning like that, and a good summary is worth its weight in gold.
And there are enough people around now that have been through this and have been on this journey. There's lots of people, I'm sure, that they can learn from and to get experience with as well.
Yes, there are lots of people. There are lots of people out there. So yeah, there are certainly people who can help. There are consultancies. There's obviously information on the internet. One thing I would say, or I'd encourage people to do, is when you're doing a modernization, only add the complexity you really need at the start. You can always add complexity later. Complexity is really difficult to remove. So it might sort of tempt you to, let's go multi-cloud provider, let's use all the services, but that's going to be quite hard to undo if you need to undo some of it. So just add the complexity you really need.
That's a good point. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I love all this stuff. I'd be very interested to hear other people's modernization stories, how they did it, the good, the bad, I don't want to know people's trade secrets, but if there are any horror stories or snags that you came across that you had to fix, I think there's great things to hear about, because those are things we can all learn from. And in some ways, every day is a school day.
And we will absolutely make sure that we share your contact details with people as well, and this comes out and they can connect with you. Yeah, we always learn more from the horror stories than we do the good news stories as well, don't we?
Yeah.
Cool. Right. Thank you, John, for sharing all your knowledge and experience in this area. We will continue to focus on this theme of modernisation through this quarter. So do get in touch if there's anything you'd like to discuss yourself. And we'll also be hosting a webinar later this quarter with guest panelists exploring that cost of failing to modernise and what that can mean for your business. We're also publishing an ebook on how to create a successful modernisation strategy, and there'll be more details to come on this in the next few episodes. Next time, I'm going to be speaking with Neil Fitzgerald, who will be discussing that aspect of modernisation in those more highly regulated environments. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. John, thank you very much. We'll close it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.